I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Graham,
Here.
Dr. Basket.
Here.
Dr. Clayton.
Here.
Dr. Adams.
Here.
Dr. Brown.
Moving on to item number 1, minutes of the regular meeting held January 25th, 2020.
I make a motion to be approved as written.
I read the minutes and I second that.
Here we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to item number 2, minutes of the special meeting held February 1st, 2024.
Make a motion to be approved.
I second that.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to item number 3, committee reports.
President, your real estate subcommittee met twice on the 29th. First meeting was regards to G3 that was recently approved by the city. It's, the planning meeting, trying to make sure we're coordinated with our tenant. The second meeting dealt with some, an ag lease issue that we met with the tenant and discussed it. And nothing to report other than we're working on those items. And then on the 7th, the real estate committee met again with G3 plus our appraiser. That was something that came out of the first meeting, the need for us to get a professional look at it so we understand the value. It's a little complicated. They're getting entitlements, it's a leasehold interest and different things. So that is being worked on. And that's all I have.
Fantastic. Any questions before I move on? Moving on to item number 4, general manager's report.
Mr. President, you may recall we, at our last normal meeting, we shared that the U.S. Air Force was going to be holding their Agile Flag Force on Force exercise. Went off without a hitch, nobody complained. I think they're all happy. We did have one vehicle pedestrian deviation by a service member who didn't get the right clearance at the road limit, and we're addressing that. It's going to push it as it needs to be. The Economic Development Commission met on the 26th and one on the 26th, and see the presentation from the county planning department, see all the things that on the unincorporated side of development that's going on in the Northford area and other places. Very good. And the police chief, city police chief, and fire chief for the presentation, discuss their departments. The Airfest committee met on the 26th for an initial kickoff meeting in preparation for next year's Airfest. So we'll be seeing more of that. They'll be coming to us at some point asking for a sponsorship. So coordinating with Jamie and to make that request. And the chamber had a state of education event. On the 31st, like all about education in the area. It was pretty informative. Last Friday, the Leadership Santa Maria Valley came for a tour. The subject was government. So we shared with them what a special district is and how the airports work and our relationship with federal government, state, and all those things. We went on a tour, took them up. There's 20 of them, so we had a couple ships have taken them up in the tower, which they all enjoyed. And then we went and met with Artcraft. So I enjoyed it very much. It's nice meeting. So those are the people we need to be interacting with.
Absolutely. The future.
So in this week, we had a meeting of the Wildlife Hazard Working Group. Tower manager was there, and station manager for the airline. And some preparation with the Part 139 inspection here shortly. There are record keeping when it comes to wildlife hazard management that we have to maintain, have ready for their review. So that's the we have some bad news. Hertz Rental Cars is terminating their lease with us. That'll be effective on the 20th of this month, giving us 30-day minutes. The hope is that the upside is that the other oil companies will a better market share position and do better, so. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for me?
I have one question. There's been some reports of theft and the theft crimes here at the airport. Any further incidents?
Not that I've heard of, it hasn't happened.
Moving on to item number 5, Manager of Finance and Administration report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I provided the command register for your review and approval.
Read through it and make a motion to approve it.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
For me.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, public session. Statements from the floor will be heard during public session. Request to speak forms are provided for those wishing to address the board. After completing the form, please give it to the clerk. Requests requiring board action will be referred to staff and brought on the next appropriate agenda. Members of the public are cordially invited to speak on agenda items as they occur. Staff reports covering agenda items are available for review in the offices of the general manager on the Tuesday prior to each meeting. The board will establish a time limit for the receipt of testimony, in this case 3 minutes. The board reserves the right to establish further time limits for receipt of testimony. Anyone have any requests to speak forms? And to accept the presentation by Christopher Brown, CJ Brown and Company CPAs regarding the 2022 and 2023 financial audits. Hello, Chris.
Good evening.
Chrissy, how's it going?
I'm doing very well. How is everybody there?
Not too bad.
Good deal.
Screen, is that what that says? Share screen?
That'll check on your screen.
How do I get him to share?
Are you able to share your screen, Chris? On your-
Yes, I was just let in, so I'm not quite sure. Do you want me to get started right now? I'm not quite sure if I'm up right now or what.
Yep, you're on board, you're at the plate. You have
There you go. Okay, let me share my screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing, so you need to let me in.
That's a screen sharing right there. That's for her screen. Almost.
Is that it? I can't read it.
I didn't have sharing.
Multiple part.
Oh.
Yep, there we go. There's.
All right, go ahead and try again, Chris.
Okay, so. Okay, so you can see my screen now, correct?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. So let me introduce myself. Once again, my name is Chris Brown. I'm with CJ Brown and Company CPAs, and we're going to go over two years worth of audits. So we're going to have lots of fun here. I'll try to make it concise so it doesn't drag out too much, but let me go ahead and get started here. Let me move. Perfect. Everything seems to be working just fine. So kind of some of the housekeeping, what I like to do is I like to let the board know that how we do our audit. Okay, our audit was performed in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America. Those are, it's called GAAS is what it's called. That's reference there. So it's basically the rules that we're required to follow when we're conducting a governmental audit. It discusses things like independence and our responsibilities and such, and we must follow that. As far as the audit process itself is, it's broken up into several periods, typically. One of them is where we assess the district's internal controls. We will take a look at certain cycles within your accounting system. such as payroll, your purchasing, disbursements, capital assets and such, and we will test those on a statistical typically basis. And from that, we determine the risk of the audit. From that, we create our audit programs, which is kind of our Bible for how we're going to basically approach the audit, the areas that we're going to concentrate on and such, where we can rely on your internal controls. For final field work, we're agreeing balances to the supporting documentation. So we're looking at your reconciliations to cash, receivables, and such. And we're finally performing an analysis of the key relationships within your financial statements themselves. So that's kind of the big picture of what we're doing. Takes quite a long time. We typically get started on the process May to June typically, and it flows all the way through August, September, ultimately ending up with the financial statements and the management report. That's kind of the big process there. There we go. There are two documents that, well, actually, in your case, there are several documents that come out of the audit. Of course, there's the ACFR, and then there's the management report, and then there's the, let me get the report here. We call it passenger facility charges and such. But within the ACFR itself, or the financial statements, is the auditor's opinion. And for 2022, we're providing you with an unmodified or a clean opinion. And it says, this is kind of a real short version, but in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the Santa Maria Public Airport District as of June 30th, 2022. So we're providing you with a clean, unmodified opinion there. The other report, or one of the other reports, is the management report. And the management report is our communication to you, the board. You are our boss, not management. It's the board of directors, and it's your best interest that we have in mind. When we're conducting the audit, and to you, we report. And the management report provides us an opportunity to basically discuss our responsibilities under GAS. I mentioned that previously. The scope of the audit, anything that we come across with regard to accounting practices that we feel needs to be discussed, any adjustments that are made to the original trial balance provided to us, any difficulties in performing the audit, and any disagreements with management. I'm happy to say there were no disagreements with management. There were some difficulties encountered in performing the audit, and I'll go over there in just a second. But that's kind of the outline for the management report. So I suggest you take a look at that. And if you have any additional questions about that, please feel free. If you don't want to ask in this meeting, feel free to follow up with me at any time you wish. So what we had in 2022 was new accounting guidance. And this is going to kind of tie in with that last slide. There's new accounting guidance. It's called GASB 87. It has to do with leases. And what it calls for is, let's forget about what's written here. Let me just kind of wing it here, and I'll tell you what it really means. What it means is, in the past, most leases were recorded on the books, and this is the way everybody did it. This is the way you were supposed to do it. So when cash came in from a lease, say you leased a space there, you typically just record the cash receipt each month, and it goes into your revenues and such. But what GASB 87 requires is that you review each individual lease and you kind of map it out. You look at the starting date, you look at the lease payment schedules, you look for any provisions in the lease that have to do with like interest rates, anything in particular. You basically put together this report of all the leases. Now, what you need to do with that is we're looking at putting the entire asset, in your case, on your financial statement. So all the leases for spaces and things like that, all the leases are listed, most all of them. Certain ones are not, regulated ones are not. But basically, all the leases are listed on this worksheet. And in your case, you purchased a software program. We'll go into that in just a moment. But basically, the idea is to look forward and discount at a particular interest rate, and it's typically like 4%, what the future cash flow streams are for all those leases. You record on your books, on your financials, or your accounting system, two things. Actually, three things. You record what's current in the next year, what you expect to receive on those leases. And you also put on the books a discounted long-term asset. So you have two things on your balance sheet right there. It's a current and long-term leases. You also, kind of the other side of it, I won't go into too much detail, you also record the total of that amount of the long-term portion in deferred inflows. And what that represents are revenues that you are recognizing in future periods. Okay, I just explained a whole bunch, but that's in that case, not in that case, a nutshell what it is that you were required to do, and everybody was required to do that. Well, the problem that was run into, and this is for the board's information, is that there were difficulties with the program, and I'm not going to lay blame anywhere, but I know that there were certain difficulties in some of the reports that were coming out of that software and getting the data into that software to where a correct, coherent report was provided to you. So significant amount of time was put in by your staff and my staff trying to go through that process, thinking that the software was kicking out the right numbers, coming to find out that it wasn't. And it took longer. So big picture, I think we had some snafus with your software in the process, trying to comply with GASB 87. It was very frustrating for for Vernica probably, and accounting staff, and I commend everybody in the process. It was a long process, and I should note that every other government agency is kind of going through the same thing, maybe not with as many issues, but they had to comply with GASB 87. So I think we're here today at this date because of this situation of implementing GASB 87 and ensuring that the numbers were correct with regard to those leases. Okay. So we have, or Jeff Palmer is the supervisor on the engagement, has worked with Vernica and staff trying to come up with a methodology going forward. And we're trusting that that process will bear fruit going into 2024. So that's kind of the situation with GASB 87, the leases, and why we're here today talking about 2022. So let me go ahead and move forward. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into the financial statements. Kind of big picture, what we have here is the condensed statements of net position. It's kind of like your balance sheet, and comparative from year to year. It's kind of on an aggregated basis. You can see 2022 and 2021, and you see in 2021, it says as restated at the top. And that again is a result primarily of GASB 87, because when you went back and you recorded those receivables on your books and that deferred inflow, it hits your bottom line. So instead of running any changes through revenue or expenses, you take it to a prior period adjustment, which hits your net position down here. So this is basically where the adjustment hits on the other side. That is proper implementation of GASB 87. So that's why we're seeing this right here, okay? So don't worry about that. It was required, it's necessary. So big picture here, total assets went down approximately 234,000. Deferred outflows of resources. This is kind of related to pension inflows, outflows, and your OPEB inflows and outflows. There's a timing differential in your pension actuarial and the date of the financial and your OPEB. So any amounts that are going to be either put to the liability or subtracted from the liability are temporarily housed in deferred outflows of resources and to a degree this deferred inflows of resources. It's kind of crazy, but that's the way it works because of the time differential. Liabilities, we can see it went down approximately 1,095,000. Deferred inflows of resources, there again, well, it went up 86,000. Part of it is related to those leases right in there, okay? The net position is essentially your net worth. It's what's left over, broken up into three parts. What you've invested in your capital assets, so cash that you've spent on infrastructure, less any debt, and less any amortization or accumulated depreciation. That's what that number represents. So this represents kind of the net worth of the assets that you put in place. Restricted for capital projects is just that. It's capital, it's cash that's set aside for particular projects and such. So we can see 1.1 million there. Unrestricted is what's left over. It does not represent cash, it represents net worth. Okay, it's going to be a mixture of all these things, your assets minus your liabilities, minus what you've invested in capital assets and what's set aside for capital projects. This is what's left over, okay? And what I like to do when I'm doing an analysis of a financial statement, and this typically applies to a long-term basis, is I like to see an improvement from year to year in unrestricted net position. Now, sometimes it goes up and down. Probably when we implemented GASB 68, it had to do with your pension. It probably took a dive down, just putting that on the books. But long term, I like to see an improvement from year to year in this unrestricted. So if it goes down temporarily, that's fine. But there again, what this tells me is that revenues and expenses are in line. So basically you have, your rate structure. That's more so for some other entities, but big picture is your rate structure, and then your expenditures, your budget for expenditures are being maintained appropriately. There again, don't go by this if you see a negative 1 year that the sky's falling. That's not true. It's necessary. It happens from time to time, but long term, you like to see this improve. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. So what we have here is the other side of the equation. This is the revenues and expenses. I'm going to go to another slide here real quick. We'll move through it fairly rapidly. I'm going to be, when we get into 2023, we're not going to need to go through quite as much as I'm going through now. But this is the other side of the equation, revenues and expenses broken out by operating, non-operating expenses, same operating, non-operating. What kind of the bottom line is, capital contributions that you received in the year, and your change in net position, which is kind of like your net income. And we can see that your change in net position for 2022 was that 749,876. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide here. Okay, so what we have here is basically greater detail, the slide that we just previously saw. This slide that we just saw, this has to do with just the revenue side of things. And it's broken out by operating and non-operating, and we can see the changes from year to year. Of course, decrease in the land use area usage, hangar area usage, main hangar, terminal area usage, pretty good increase in the land usage side of things, other charges and such. Total operating revenues were up 236,000 and change. Non-operating is, well, let me back up. Operating is what you do for a living. So you're providing flight-related services, and to a degree, hangar services and things like that. This is related to kind of ancillary flows, things like property taxes and interest earnings. And you can see the changes from year to year. Property tax of about 105,000. Interest earnings down a bit. Let's see what we got here. CARES, of course, we would expect this to go down because CARES grants are going down, going away. TSA reimbursement and other. Total revenues of the 7.198 million, which was a decrease of approximately 364,000 from the prior year. Other side of the equation is your expenses. Same thing, operating, non-operating, and depreciation. Total operating expenses increased approximately 854,000. Depreciation went up a little bit, 37,000. Non-operating, same sort of concept. It's things that are fall outside of your normal business. Things like interest expense, like air show expense. Okay, you're not in the business of putting on air shows, so you would normally run that through this line item. And miscellaneous. Total non-operating expenses, 33,500, down 475,000. Thing that was really driving it in 21, of course, was this revenue guarantee expense. So total expenses for the year, 8,464,000 and change. So I know this was a while ago. This is just a narrative. We don't need to go through this. I just went through this. This is a narrative of the revenues and the expenses. So let me just kind of encapsulate what we talked about. Excuse me. We talked about the GASB 87 implementation, the snafus involved with implementing that. We were able to provide you with a, excuse me, a unmodified opinion. In the management report, we do basically spell out that whole situation with the software and preparation for the audit. We have to make it sound very official and formal in our letter, but what I went over is essentially what was causing a lot of that. You saw the results of your operations for 2022. And that is pretty much it for 2022. I don't know if you have questions on that, if you want to vote on 2022, or if you want me to move into 2023.
We don't vote on it. We just-
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go on to 2023.
Okay. So what I'm going to need to do, I'm going to stop sharing that. Bear with me for a moment. Do you see the presentation on the screen?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, pulled it off. All right. I'm proud of that. All right. Okay, so let's go through 2023 current events here. Same discussion with regard to the audit itself. This is exactly what you saw on the previous slide. With regard to our auditor's opinion, it is again unmodified. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the Santa Maria Public Airport District as of June 30th, 2023. So congratulations on that. With regard to the management report, same talking points I had for you before. It's our opportunity to talk to you. Again, within the management report is a formal discussion of our findings. There again, we are referring primarily back to the GASB 87 implementation. The two audit years, basically one rolled right into the next. So as we started 2023, we recognized some issues that really related to 2022. So we went back and adjusted 2022. So the management report is going to reflect that as well. Okay. New guidance in 2023, there's a thing called GASB 96. I'm happy to say it didn't have any effect on you guys. So, but what this does is it basically takes leases one step further, and it talks about subscription-based IT arrangements, things like leased softwares and things like that. And it's only on a material basis that this is being addressed. So it had no huge effect on your financials. So we don't even need to go into that. With regard to results, we see an increase in total assets of approximately 7.3 million. What's driving a lot of it is this change right here. And what's changing this is an adjustment to the leases. Again, it went up approximately 4 million, 4+ million increase from the prior year. So that's really what's driving a lot of this change right here. Nothing unusual. It's just the effect of those leases on your financials. Deferred outflows of resources up 476,000. Total liabilities, we see it went up approximately 2.6 million. Let me check one thing here. So I've got a bunch of reports surrounding me so I can reference if need be. So what we saw affecting these numbers right here was we saw actually a slight decrease in the OPEB, the other than pension benefits, went down about 70,000, but the pension liability went up approximately 1.2 million. So a lot of this that you see right here is related to the pension obligation going up. And what's driving the pension obligation is a couple of years ago, there's approximately, if I'm remembering correctly, about 3.8 billion surplus in CalPERS. Well, in the very next year, it's kind of the opposite story. They saw a decrease. So what you're seeing here is the effect of decreases in your, but the rate of return on the portfolio in CalPERS and how it relates to your liability. It's just going to go up and down. That seems to be kind of the way it goes. It's kind of like an oscillating item, up 1 year, maybe 2 years, down 1 year, maybe 2 years. So kind of get used to that. That's just kind of normally the way it works, especially with the market the way it is these days. Look what we're going through right now. The market is up, historical levels. Well, if this maintains, we're going to see probably a decrease in your liabilities next year. It'll be just the opposite of what we're seeing here. So there's nothing you can do about it. That's just the way the system is set up. You're just recording the numbers, essentially. Total liabilities up that 2.6 million. Deferred inflows. Here again, this big increase is really has to do with those leases and OPEB. Not OPEB, I'm sorry, pension. Primarily the leases is affecting this. So what's going to happen in the future is this number will go down as you recognize revenue from those leases over the years. But on the other side, you'll probably have new leases. So you're always going to be repopulating this. But in all things being equal, if there were no new leases put on the books, this would go down. Here again, net position, your net worth, and we did see it go down a tiny bit. I wouldn't worry about that too much. Here again is the condensed statement of revenues and expenses and changes in net position. Bottom line is you had a loss before capital contributions of the 1.3 million. And you had capital contributions of 2.75. I'm going to okay, so here again are operating revenues, non-operating revenues as well. So we saw a slight decrease in the land usage. You can basically see what's going on here. 70,000 hangar use, main hangar 21,000. Big number again is the land usage, other charges and fees, non-operating revenues. Let's see, property taxes up a bit. interest earnings up because we saw an improvement. We see CARES Act airport grants down. Of course, we were expecting that. Gain on land sale. Okay, that's kind of an one-time event right there. Total revenue 7.7 million, up 540,000. This is the this here is the other side, operating expenses, depreciation, and non-operating expenses. We can see total operating expenses up approximately 100,662. Big things here, decrease in public administration, land usage, see the changes there. Depreciation, it's pretty flat. Given these numbers, that's pretty flat, up 105,000 from the prior year. Changes in non-operating expenses, airshow expense, net, means, numbers are being pulled together to come to the final number there, not 195,000. We have an item here that is a little bit different here. So what happened in 2023 is the note receivable from board member David Basket was written off for 166,218. It's considered uncollectible. So you'll see that this has been put into the non-operating expense area there. Okay. With regard to disposal of assets, 39,000, investment earnings, as far as, or I should say investment losses, there were none. There were some in the prior year. You had a gain in the current year, which was seen in revenues. Total expenses of 9,040,788. So big picture again, yeah. So the what we bumped into, what everybody bumped into getting GASB 87 implemented, and the software and just getting that all straightened out, kind of rolled into 2023. We discovered some items that needed to be re-examined, which was done and recorded. All the proper leases are on your books now. With regard to GASB 96, sorry about that, 96, no real effect. You saw the effect of this write-off. This is kind of a one-time event there. And of course, the change in the CARES Act funding from one year to the other. Those were kind of the major things within the financials. But there again, clean opinion, management report is there for you to review. If you have questions, let me know. And we just went over the results of your operations. And that is my report for 22 and 23. And thank you so much for being patient. I know that was a lot of stuff. Going through 1 year is a lot, but going through 2 is tests your patience. I realize. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
Nice report.
Thank you. Now I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.
All right, we will take a 5-minute break and go into closed session.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
All right.
Appreciation numbers.
It's not real money.
It's not real much. It's $2 million that really is pockets there.
We are back from the break and now going into closed session. Okay. Mark, you mind taking off the.
Oh.
We exit closed session with no reportable actions. Moving on to item number 9, director's comments. Let's start with Basket.
Yeah, a few here. I'm worried about our lack of care for some of our facilities and how we might be endangering cadets. At night, there's on Tuesday nights, the Civil Air Patrol cadets marching around out there without any lights, someone using flashlights to march around and look where they're going. Well, I'd like to see some more fix-up money, put lights up, out there where the cadets go. Also allows better lights so the aircraft taxis into the service facility there. And also maybe fix up part of the building so that we can be a bit proud of it. Martin's taken, and I've taken, and other people taken visitors. And we sort of let that building run down. Talk about the main paint hanger. Also, there's been no evidence, I've asked for it for some time, of any single dollar resulting from the hangar policy instituted by Director Brown that shows it's only one more gallon of gasoline for anybody as a result of the evidence, resulting from the policy. And I think it's been a mistake. I think we should put on the agenda and get it reversed. And my view, and the reports I've had resulted now in empty T hangers. The main paint hanger, I was involved a day later, fortunately, when the SWAT team came in with helicopters and let people down ropes. A boat sailed off the coast, and the sheriffs up in San Luis Obispo County showed up with 30 or 40 officers, and they started busting into doors and windows and other places in the old Air Force base up at Cambria. And that disturbed a lot of the asbestos and other things. So I spent some time becoming aware of the problem with asbestos paint. And it's my view that we could fix up this hangar, very little risk, and start making a place we can be proud of instead of all the rusty doors and the bad sidings and the paint falling off. And start with the test section. I'll be glad to give the detailed regulatory information if anybody wants to have it. Because buildings are rusting, pavement looks like something that I rode on when I was in Nigeria. Tom, one thing I've asked a few times, but there's not my decision, it's just a suggestion, is to have written reports once in a while on what you're doing. Status of microgrid, and power on, there's no other report today, but likelihood of massive power outage. And I'd like to see us be energy independent, this airport, and keep the lights on. Glad there's no problem. Drone detection. Well, we've got still endangered drones. Even those little model ones you get now in the stores have some geofencing. I'm not worried about those, but we should take a fresh look at drones and defending this airport and keeping it safe. And that's my my comments for the evening.
Well, there's still a lot of issues with the airport, but I think we're making the right chess moves and heading in the right direction, so that's my comment.
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate the work being done on these other issues in those sessions. Good.
I have no comment this evening either. The only comment I have, because their director Basket keeps mentioning my name, I'd like to point out to him that that thing was voted on 4 against 1, which was you. You continual whining spite product to change the outcome of it. So that's my comment. I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second. All in favor? Aye.